Alright, I'm going to try and do this really quickly. I've decided that the only way for me to film these videos is to do them when I have the house to myself, which isn't often. And all three of my girls are out at swimming this morning for a little while. So I've got a small window where I can start this series of videos that I'm really keen to start. So I've talked a little bit in previous videos about the fact that I had gone and gotten a standard Gibson SG. I think all of you have seen that. I've done a little fretwork to it. Plays really well now. I think I've sorted out most of the problems, but we'll be having a pretty good look at that. Anyway, the point of these videos, and I've already thought of a clever little title, because I was thinking about the idea that the Captain and Chappers, Rob Chapman of Chapman Guitars. If you're watching me, I'm sure 90% of you know who Chappers and the Captain are. I love those guys. I think they're great. I love their channel. I love their reviews. They've done numerous tests. They did a really interesting one a couple of weeks ago, a blindfold test with some Squires and Fenders, Telecasters I think they did, and then they did Stratocasters. And then more recently, I think 2 videos ago, they did Gibsons and Epiphones. They did a little blind comparison between Gibsons and Epiphones. I think it was Les Pauls, I can't remember right now, but if you're a fan of theirs, I'm sure you know what video I'm talking about. Anyway, I really very much wanted to do a blind fold test with some mates for fun. But anyway, I just wanted to start this series by telling you a few things that I think, as much as I love those guys, they'll never tell you. And that's going to be, I think, the title of this video is what Chappers and the Captain will never tell you about brand new guitars. And for those of you who play SGs, you're going to know right away what I'm talking about, okay? So I'm going to make this really quick. Every SG up until now that I've laid my hands on, and granted that's few of them, but I've heard this and I've read this, all have a similar problem. And the problem I've discovered with all 3 of them, both the over $1,000 Gibson and the sub $500 Epiphones, they all have some problem areas in the frets. And in particular, where I have found problems with all 3 of them is right down here, sort of like, let's see here, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, so sort of around the 17th fret, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, like in around here. Now, I've sorted this one out, and I'm going to show you how I sorted this one out, but actually I've sorted them both out. They both now are, I've fixed the problem on all 3 of them. And it's an interesting process to fix this problem because they all 3 needed to have this done to them. So like I said, the problem areas, the real big problem areas, certainly less so with the brand new one. Because all I did when I got it was I set it up to factory spec. I just, I checked the nut action on both the E string and the both E strings. It was actually perfect right from the store, right from factory. I then checked, of course, the action. That needed a significant adjustment. So the saddles went down on either end, and it's now at the 12th fret. Just exactly what Gibson specifies, which is 5/64ths. And if you saw a couple of videos ago where I explained how to achieve that measurement a few different ways, if you haven't, go back and look. It's a long video, but I show you a few ways to achieve that. And of course, heaps of guys online will show you all kinds of great ways to do that as well. That's where I got most of my ideas. But anyway, so it's 5/64ths at the 12th on the low E, and it's 3/64ths. I think in my last video I said it was supposed to be 4, but it's actually 3. At any rate, it is. So I set it up exactly to Gibson factory spec, and there I go sniffling. Somebody made a comment about me sniffling all the time. You know what I'd really like to say is something nasty. I have young kids. I'm sick all the time. I got a cold, always, perpetual cold. If you've got young kids, they go to school, they bring home all kinds of shit. You're always sick. That's why I'm always sniffling. Okay. Summer just started here. I try to spend as much time as I can outside and get my vitamin D. Yes, I look sick because I am sick. I'm run down. What I do is I stay home and I look after young kids. I am totally run down. I cough, I sniffle. Yes, I am in a slightly poor health. However, I'm a happy camper, so if my sniffling bothers you, try to imagine what I want to tell you, okay? Because if you don't have kids, you don't understand. Anyway, what was I talking about? I was talking about action. So again, so I checked a few things. I checked the action. I checked the nut action. I checked the neck relief. The neck relief is set at 11 thousandths. That was actually pretty good, again, from the factory. So really the only thing was the action. And the reason that they have set the action so high is because of these treble frets. Because when you pick it up in the store, nothing rattles, it plays okay, but the action is pretty high. Like when I checked it, it is supposed to be, again, it's supposed to be 4/64ths at the 12th, or sorry, 5/64ths at the 12th on the low E, and 3/64ths on the high E. And it was, I think it was floating near around, when I checked it, it had to be at least double that. It had to be at least double that on both sides. So it was really high. It was like, it played like an acoustic. There I go again, sniffling. Sorry about that. I'll try to clear my sinuses next time. I'm joking. Anyway, so I set it up to Gibson factory spec, and right away, that showed me where the problems were. Like, they were glaring. Like, I had at least 5 or 6 frets on the G string and the B string and the E string that were just all rattling. So of course that means the fret in front of that is higher. So these frets weren't even. And for those of you who know how to fix this, I took an idea from a guy you probably also watch if you're watching me, because I'm small time and this guy is awesome. Crimson Guitars. If you haven't seen Ben from Crimson Guitars, he is the shit. He makes awesome guitars. And I've also seen David Fletcher do this. Fletcher's guitars. Oh my god. If I had all the money in the world, tomorrow I would call David Fletcher and have him build me a custom one of these right away. Right away. If you've got cash, I beg you, go and check out David Fletcher's YouTube website, and I promise you, you're going to order a custom guitar. Like, if you've got cash, if you're a rich guy, I'm not a rich guy. I don't think most of us guitar players are, but if you're a rich dude, and you're watching, you happen to be watching me, and you don't know David Fletcher, beg you, go and see his YouTube channel. He makes amazing stuff. Anyway, again, I digress. So I took this idea of how to fix this problem from these two guys who build brand new custom guitars, because they do this to their guitars from the get-go. The guitar comes set up this way. And essentially what I did, and I'll go into more detail when I have some more time to film the actual process, rather than just kind of sit down and talk about it, but essentially, once you level the frets, and I've got a couple of tools now to do fret leveling and fret crowning. I'm doing this enough that the investment was worth it for me. So essentially what I did was I leveled the frets on all 3 of these guitars, and then I taped from the 12th up, and then just skimmed across the bottom half of the bottom third of the fretboard, and then essentially just re-leveled it. So I took just a bit more material off the bottom third of the fretboard from the bottom of the 12th on, and like, it completely cured this problem. Completely. So because the title of this video is What Won't, Captain and the Chappers and the Captain Tell You, particular about these guitars, and I'm certain about other inexpensively manufactured guitars. And I'm convinced now, the more I think about this, the reason these guitars are so inexpensive is because essentially what you're getting is you're getting a load of expensive parts that are, in my estimation, 8/10 of the way finished being built. That's really what I think you would probably pay quite a lot more money for this guitar, because it's a fantastic guitar. It's made out of lovely mahogany, lovely, I think it's rosewood, both of them. Pickups. Wow, do the pickups on this Epiphone sound absolutely fantastic. In fact, I think I prefer them to the Gibson ones. They're just a bit brighter and a bit more crisp, and personally, I like that. I like that the articulation in these pickups is very clear to my ear. Anyway, so it's a lovely guitar, but I guess what I'm warning you about is that if you pick that up in the shop, and this is really the crux of this video, if you pick this up in the shop, or any guitar really, around the $300–400 range or less, is, especially with a make like this, like an Epiphone, that's a pretty trusted brand. This is not a piece of crap. This is a pretty nice guitar. The reality of which is it needs some pretty significant work to bring it up to a standard that, a player expects a well set up guitar to feel like. And I think the problem is that with beginners who buy these guitars, because that's who tends to buy these inexpensive guitars, is beginners. And that's who I got my used one from, was a beginner. Guy bought it for his kid. His kid, I think, played it for a year. This is the one right here. They're exactly the same except for a few minor hardware details. But when I got this guitar, now I've already told you these all have fret treble below the 12th on the higher strings. Okay, and I had to do, I'm not kidding you, each of these guitars, now granted I'm a beginner at doing this sort of work, but I can't imagine it would be an inexpensive thing to pay a proper luthier or guitar tech to do. But anyway, so I've picked up the used one here, and like I said, I grabbed this from a guy who said he bought it for his son. Like, I don't know if his story was true or not, but I did a trade for it. I traded one of the Squires for it. And there was a few other things in the trade to make things even for me. But anyway, so I got this one, and it's in a shocking state. And it's not even a year old. Like, just shocking to play. The action was way out of whack. It was super high. And again, for exactly the same reason. Because of all these treble frets, what people do is they raise up the action so that they don't rattle anymore. And that's it. Then they leave it, and then it's super hard to play. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't intonate right. It just doesn't feel right. So his son gave up, is what he says. And then he claims that he's a Fender player and that he didn't really like the feel of this. Well, I can tell you why he didn't like the feel of this guitar, is because it was shocking to play. It was in a poor state and not even a year old. So if the one I got brand new, when I set it up to spec, had these problems, now granted, they weren't nearly as bad as this one, because this one was really bad. I really had to do quite a lot of work to this one. And it still needs a little bit of adjustment here. I don't know if you can hear this. Let's just pull up the volume a bit. But down here in the same place, it doesn't sound as good as this one here yet. I still need to skim over this one more time. Alright, so just had the battery die on my camera. So I figured I'd take an opportunity to go pee. Blow my nose. So now that I've done all that running around, I'm coughing. Because I have a cold. All the time. Perpetually. Because I have young kids. That most of my viewers seem to hate. No, but seriously, people seem to hate that my kids show up on the videos. It's so funny to me. So I'm trying to do the videos without the kids. It's not a real big deal, but you know, I sorted out these guitars because the truth is I don't often have a chance where, you know, all the girls are out of the house. Oh crap, and there they come. So they're home. So this video's over. That's it, they're home. I just saw them pull in the driveway. So I'm going to finish this quick, because they're going to come in here screaming in about 30 seconds. So the point of this video, oh no, that's not them. Oh. Awesome. Somebody just pulling into my driveway to turn around. Okay. Definitely going to edit that out of the video. Okay, so back to this guitar before the battery died and I got all off onto something else, like I tend to do. This is the used one. This is the one the fella, you know, complained about, that was poorly set it up. And like I explained earlier in this video, which I fear is going to get really long again, this one had trouble in the same problem area, under the 12th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th fret. They all rattled. As soon as I dropped it down to Fender, or fuck, I keep saying Fender, Gibson spec, it showed all, it highlighted all the problem areas right away. This one again too, good nut action. Relief was actually okay. These Gibsons and these Epiphones are kind of strange. The Fenders I've worked on tend not to operate like this. I don't know if it's how, you know, the wood they use or what, but I find that if you pull the strings off these Gibsons or Epiphones, the neck kind of almost straightens out perfectly, and then when you put the strings on, the strings almost kind of pull them into the perfect neck relief, meaning the slight bit of bow that you want in the middle of the neck so that the string can vibrate properly. So before I got off and got all crazy, I was trying to explain that, you know, I don't often have time to work on these guitars because it takes a few hours without the kids around so that I can actually film this process. It's like it's nearly impossible. So I will try to show some of this because, like I said, I do have to do just a touch more work on this one, so I'll show you how I fix this problem, because I think that this is, I now truly believe that this is common to every SG because of the way they're manufactured. I haven't quite figured out why. Maybe if somebody out there knows why, they can tell me. Because again, I'm trying to learn about this stuff. So this is just my personal discovery. And like I said, the brand new one has exactly the same problem. My Gibson has the same problem, and I had to fix the same problem the same way on all three of them. So this one needed a lot of work, and so what I suspect has happened to this one in the probably year of ownership or more. I don't really know what the age of this one is. It looks pretty new. It doesn't have a mark on it, like there's not a scratch on this guitar. It's like it just came out of the store. I mean, apart from not having the decals on it, like it really does just look like somebody picked it up out of the guitar shop. There's not a single mark on this guitar. So I think that these guitars are probably prone to, these necks are probably prone to some twist. I really am starting to believe that something down here, or maybe the way the frets are seated at the factory, because that was the other thing I noticed on both of these cheaper ones, that, well, I fixed it. I fixed it so I can't show you now. But the frets didn't seem to be seated properly. There were gaps, like there were clearly gaps under a lot of the frets. So they were super uneven on this, especially this old one. Not so much on this new one. But I think that the fretboard has just, in the year of ownership and lack of play, has just dried out. You know when they tell you that a guitar needs to be played and if it just sits, that's the worst thing for it? There's a reason for that. Because if you're not, if the natural oils from your fingers aren't getting into the fretboard, and the fact that maybe you clean it up every time you put on a fresh set of strings, and you know, put some oil on the fretboard and hydrate it and take care of it. I mean, really what it boils down to is if I could make a car comparison, these Gibsons to me, and most high-end guitars, like, and guitars in general, I think should be treated like a car. But changing the strings is like getting an oil change, right? So when you're changing the oil, what do? You check the filters, you check other fluids, you check everything, right? Everything that is serviceable if you're looking after your vehicle. And we know, and not everyone looks after their vehicle. I personally think now that I'm teaching myself to do this stuff, is stuff that I now do every time I change my strings. There's a few things I do every time I change my strings. I check all the measurements again, and because I'm playing it all the time, I'm always keenly aware of where the trouble areas are. So I'm always making a mental note of when I'm playing guitars, as I make adjustments, I make small adjustments and then I go away and I take the guitar away and I play it for a week. You don't have that luxury if you drop it off at a tech. You drop it off at a tech, the tech fixes it to the best of their ability within spec, they play it for maybe a couple days to make sure that, you know, it doesn't change overnight or over a couple days. But if it's your own guitar, the incentive to learn, it's just another incentive to learn to fix your own guitars, is that you can make adjustments, put a fresh set of strings on, wear those strings out, and that's what I do now with every guitar. I wear out a set of strings after I've made adjustments, which might be a couple of weeks, right? Because I play them now so much that if I spend hours a day, you know, 20 minutes here, half an hour there, as much as I can playing these guitars, in a couple of weeks, I've killed a set of strings. So for me, like when I did this fretwork, I put on a fresh set of strings, and that's where I'm at right now. I've got a fresh set of strings after a load of work that I've done to all three of these. And I'm just going to play them, even though they're not quite perfect. This one is, the new one is really damn close to perfect. It needs a couple of adjustments. The Gibson, super close, at least for my playing style and for my touch. It might not be for someone else, but it's certainly within Gibson factory spec, and to me it feels buttery smooth. So I'm just gonna, but this one here, this used one, still, like I said, it needs, I don't know if you can hear it. There it is. There we go. There's a bad one. You see, then it gets better. I like to try and bend the string too when I'm checking for these problem spots, because you might play it and it doesn't sound like it's rattling, but as soon as you bend it up, maybe it begins to rattle, and that's what I found was the problem with a lot of these frets, because they weren't level. So they bottom out if you bent the string. So if you notice, not a great player, but I also, when I'm playing the guitar, what I was also sort of doing, and I'm not going to show all that, I'm going to cut a lot of that, but what I'm doing is, I'm playing certain areas of the guitar that had trouble, and I'm playing songs that I know in a sort of an exaggerated way, to kind of force those problems to the surface. Like, I'm looking for articulation in the notes, and I'm looking for any rattling and just problem areas. So I'll play songs that I know how they're supposed to sound in my mind, and then see what happens. So you have to listen carefully. So, again, not trying to show off as a player. We all know I'm a crap player, but because of what I'm playing, I'm looking for, like, are the strings interfering with another? Am I able to fret out that note without interfering with another string? And I mean, a lot of that's down to your ability, but if you play something slow and exaggerated and you know how it's supposed to sound and you can at least manage to play it properly in a slow and exaggerated way, it'll sort of highlight those problem areas, and that's what I'm trying to do. So, I don't know if you noticed there, but I noticed. Just not quite right. And then I kind of just double check it, and actually that sounded okay to me, so I don't know, you know, sometimes it's in your head, sometimes you can probably think too much about it, but no, there it is. And again, that might be down to your ability, you might be doing that wrong, so keep that in mind, right? Like, this is not an exact science, but to me I find it helpful. I also find it helpful, sometimes I'll just record myself playing with my phone and just watch it. And it's easier when you watch it over and over and over again to see what's wrong. So just by playing something that you know and just jamming and not thinking about it, and then you can play that back just a few minutes on your phone, and you'll find that as you watch it over and over again, and I mean I use that for a few reasons. I use it to improve my playing, and I use it to help me fix my guitar, to see where the problem areas are, especially when I'm being deliberate about where I'm playing, to try and look for these areas, like you can hear that right away. That's not hard to hear. Okay, so that's fretting out. Now to some guys that might be acceptable, but to me, like, I can hear it and I hate it, it drives me crazy. So I need to fix that. And like I said, I already know how to fix that. I fixed it completely on the new one and completely on the Gibson. So I'm sure this video is so long, I'm going to have to cut a heap out of it. But the point I want to really get across is between these new ones and these old ones, things that review sites, and I'm not trying to pick on Captain and Chappers and the Captain. I love those guys. So don't misunderstand. And if by some miracle these guys are actually watching my video, guys, I love you guys. I'm not bagging on you at all. I think the reason that you guys don't say this stuff, and this is another point I wanted to make, is you're in the business of selling guitars, okay? It's really obvious why you wouldn't point out these manufacturing flaws. That's completely forgivable. It's not something I'm pointing out to say you're bad guys or anything like that. It's, to me, really obvious why you wouldn't say this stuff. I have no vested interest in selling these guitars, so to me, for me to say this stuff is not hurting me in any way. Please, I just wanted to say that. Don't misunderstand. I'm not bagging on review guys or anybody like the Captain and Chappers. I love those guys. But the reality is they're in the business of selling guitars, so they're not going to tell you this stuff. They just aren't. Nobody who's in the business of selling guitars is going to tell you this stuff. And the reality is, let me just grab the new one, because you'll see that I have indeed fixed those areas. So I'm just going to quickly, right. So let me just grab the new one here, and you're going to see that I have fixed those areas. Right, if I come down here to the same place, so to me, this one here is rolling good. The pickups sound slightly different on this one. I don't know what it is about them. At first I thought I was still having fret trouble, but it's the pickups. So if you heard anything in the video, I assure you, when I play this one not plugged in, there's no trouble with it at all. It's perfect. Or at least to my ear, it's perfect. So I guess how I want to end this video is by saying, at least with this make and model, and I'm sure the same holds true for many makes and models of guitar, but I have heard that SGs have a manufacturing design flaw. Now I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's the way they're manufactured. I don't know. I mean, I have to believe that has a large part of the way these guitars come to you, I mean, even brand new, is due to the manufacturing process in terms of how far they actually take setting up the guitar. So I think what they do is they assume that these guitars are going to go to players who really couldn't tell the difference between a well set up guitar and a poorly set up guitar. They assume because the price point, and this is my assumption. Okay, this is what I believe. I don't know if it's the truth. If you know different, please enlighten me. But I assume, or I've concluded, that because of the price point and because of the type of person who's going to be probably 9 times out of 10 buying this guitar, probably doesn't know a heap about guitars, probably doesn't know a well set up guitar from a poor set up guitar. And I think it's a real travesty, because if the story that the guy, at least the used one that I got, which if it came in the condition that my new one got, it clearly only got worse. The problem clearly only got worse because I believe that the neck got dry and that these frets probably continued to unseat themselves and make the problem worse, and particularly down around here, and that they tried to solve the problem by simply raising the action, which clearly is not the way to solve this problem. So the real point of this is you go and you pay $400. I mean, here in Canada, this guitar retails for $385. So in America, our good friends down south, I'm sure it's a little less expensive. In the rest of the world, I'm sure it's comparably priced against more expensive guitars. But the point is that you spend, at least here in Canada, you spend a little over $400 after taxes on a guitar like this. And particularly if it's your first guitar, $400 is not an insignificant amount of money, and certainly for a parent like me, it's not an insignificant amount of money to give to a young kid. So you expect that this guitar is going to be, if you don't know any better, you expect that it's going to be playable, because you don't know any better. You don't know the guitars come poorly set up from a guitar shop. Every guitar that I've ever touched in a guitar shop is poorly set up, because they can't afford to pay a tech to set up every guitar they put up on the showroom floor. Sure, maybe they set up the really, really expensive ones that get, the Les Paul Customs, the stuff that's over $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, and probably already comes pretty well set up to begin with. So they probably breathe some pixie dust on it and make them perfect for the inside of the shop. But a $300 or $400 guitar, no way are they paying a tech to go around and set up and correct these factory problems So you're getting a guitar, I really believe you're getting a guitar in this price point, probably from most manufacturers. With a few exceptions, those Squiers were pretty good. They were pretty well set up from the factory. I have to give that to Fender or Squier, or whoever's running that show. Those Squiers really did come from the factory in superb playing order. They needed a slight adjustment, but they were superb. They're not at all, like these come, you'd be shocked if you picked up one and the other. You really would. So, I guess the point that I'm trying to make probably for 30 minutes here, hopefully if I can reduce the length of this video, is what to expect when you buy brand new versus used, right? I mean, this is the start of, I'm hoping, a series on what to expect when you buy new versus used. So new, I had a slight factory problem. Used, I had a very exaggerated, left untreated factory problem that had only been exacerbated by leaving it alone and doing nothing but letting the guitar sit and dry out unplayed. So bad thing to do. Leaving the guitar unplayed and stand in a case, I personally think is a bad thing to do. Play it. If you're not playing it, get rid of it. Give it to somebody sell it to somebody who will play it. It's the worst thing for a guitar in my estimation, is just leaving it sat there unplayed. I try to play all three of my guitars equally, because I'm now more keenly aware of what they need. They're like temperamental sports cars. They need a lot of attention, they need a lot of constant adjustment, and particularly these used guitars. And the real travesty and the real overarching point that I've been trying to make this whole time, very unsuccessfully I might add, is that it's a real shame that manufacturers don't really get that if you want to get a young kid into playing, you gotta put a guitar in their hands that feels good. If the guitar is hard to play, if it doesn't feel good, a kid's gonna give up. I promise you. I promise you a kid is gonna give up unless they really love the instrument and get into it and they're keen about it. Obviously there are gonna be those examples, but 9 out of 10 times, 8 out of 10 times, I'm almost positive. You put a shitty playing guitar in a kid's hands, it's going to be difficult for them, right? And lots of kids are going to give up because of that. I really believe that kids are going to give up if something doesn't feel good, if it's difficult, if it's hard, unless you really love it, unless you really have a passion and you want to work through that and work out why your guitar isn't playing well, which I reckon for most really, really young kids is probably not the case in most instances. And guitar shops. So really, I mean, you can't put too much of this blame on the manufacturer. I think the manufacturer does what they do to a price point, and it's all down to price, right? It's all down to the cost of this. And the guitar shops do what they can to a certain point, right? Like I've already said, like it would cost a guitar shop so much money to have them have a tech really sort out every cheap guitar so it plays well. What most good guitar shops do is they offer you a free setup, but how many people do you think take advantage of that? That's like a mail-in rebate coupon to me. Like, okay, you bought this guitar, you're welcome to a free setup. How many people do you really think take advantage of that? Especially if they don't know any better, especially if they get a guitar home and they don't know that it's just not playing well because it's not set up well. Maybe then they decide, I don't like this guitar because it feels wrong. So maybe that turns them off this brand. They go to another brand. You know, maybe if they're keen, they can try to push through it, and they unload this guitar, and then maybe move over to Fender. Maybe they grab one of those Squiers that plays awesome and needs very little adjustment, and that's the brand they end up sticking with. Maybe then that makes them lifelong Fender people. It's crazy to me. So what are you going to expect if you're buying these guitars for yourself or for your kids? Well, I expect that if you don't know how to fix these problems, and I had to teach myself to fix these problems because, you know, it is very expensive. I cannot imagine the bill I would have gotten to fix this old one. I can't imagine the amount of fretwork that I had to do to it, the hours and hours and hours that I spent trying to fix this one. Granted, I went at it really slowly, and I'm not an expert. I'm not a trained tech. I'm not a trained luthier. Nothing like that. But I expect at least a 2 or 3 hour job for a trained tech to have dealt with this problem all the way, like to get it perfect. Like I said, mine's not, you know, they're not all the way there perfect. They all need a whisker of adjustment. The old one, a little bit more than the other two, but the point is they're mine, so I can play them. I know where these trouble spots are, and the next string change, I'll just continue to make adjustments until they do become perfect. But if you wanted to get a well-playing guitar at an inexpensive price, you need to factor in the cost of a setup. I really think you do. I really think that you're buying one of these from the guitar shop, that you need to negotiate with the guitar shop, especially if you know what you're doing and you pick one up and you find these treble areas, and I'm telling you, they're going to be there, I think, on every one of these. I'd love to roll into a guitar shop and play some more of these and see if my theory is correct. And if those of you out there play SGs, maybe you can support my theory or you know, debunk it. But I think with these guitars that you're gonna have to factor in the cost of probably some pretty major, at least fretwork. In particular with these Epiphones. And so if you pick one of these guitars up and I would highly recommend, if you don't know how to do this yourself, that you negotiate with the guitar shop for a proper setup. And if it comes back to you not playing well and you have trouble spots, keep giving it back until it comes back right. Now that will be a big pain, but at least you're going to pay what you paid for your inexpensive guitar, and it's going to come to you playing well. And if you're giving this to your kid, for example, I think you're starting your kid off with, you know, an advantage with a well-playing guitar. Anyway, I'm going to end this video right now because it's probably super long. I'm going to have to edit a ton out of it. I know the girls are probably moments away from getting home. So, the summary, at least with these Epiphones, what are you going to expect new and brand used? Major fretwork. I promise you. I'm convinced of it. And I also am convinced of it with the more expensive Gibsons. I'm convinced. It's probably not going to be as bad when these are brand new, but I think the problems will exacerbate themselves over time if the guitar is left untreated. And I think that's what happened to my more expensive one, because it's a bit older. I think the previous owner probably just didn't look after it, because when I got it, the action was really high, the fretboard was really dry, everything was out of alignment. So, like I said, I think the problem just got exacerbated by lack of attention. So, at least with SGs, sure, they sound awesome once they're set up. They're wonderful, wonderful guitars. But if you're buying new or used, make sure that you either negotiate a setup with a brand new one, or with a used one, make sure you negotiate that out of the price you pay, or whatever you trade. Because I guarantee you it's going to cost you better than $100 to solve that problem. I'm positive of it. Anyway, I'm going to end this video. Thank you everyone for watching. Thanks to heaps of new subscribers. Thousands of views I can't even count. It's crazy. Thanks everyone. And please go check out David Fletcher and go check out Crimson Guitars.